Alex, where's LeBron going?
Uh, Wherever he feels like.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Do you
Are
follow?
you actually following that?
A little, yeah. Well, because there's a big free agency decision that affects Chicago, and other free agency contracts aren't going to get signed until LeBron settles.
Right, that's the whole thing, right? Like he's basically holding the entire league hostage at this point because everybody's trying to free up cap room to see who's going to be available after he goes where he goes.
Yeah,
And there are only like three teams that are actually vying for him, though, right?
yeah. At this point, it is just the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat. The
Right.
Cavaliers, where he was from after that disastrous decision thing, and then the Miami Heat,
God.
obviously, where he has been. But yes, not to get too in the weeds on NBA stuff, but yes, Carmelo Anthony might come to the Bulls, which would be huge for us. And nothing happens until LeBron figures out what the hell he's doing. So, LeBron, I don't give a shit about you, but figure it out, brother.
Get it done so that, the Bulls can actually do something in free agency. What are the Bulls
Um,
looking to do?
Carmelo Anthony is this player from the
Oh,
Knicks.
for God's sakes. No, I know who Carmelo Anthony is. No,
Oh,
no, don't
okay.
get him.
Well, why?
I don't know. The impression I've always gotten about him was that he was not a particularly great locker room presence, and that he was also prone to bouts of just holding the ball for long periods of time and not giving it to anyone else.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm incorrect about that, but that has been
Yeah,
the perception I've read about him.
the NBA scholars that are Patrick Klepek and Alex Navarro reading
Yes.
the tea leaves. Hey, we're just trying. Look, we were told that we needed to start taking advantage of SEO, and so we looked at what was in the news today, and LeBron James in the news. So we got to find some way to talk about it.
Yeah. Don't worry, I will spare you any hockey free agency stuff going on right now.
Do you actually pay attention to that?
A little bit.
Okay.
I mean, enough to at least kind of know what's going on, but not enough to really know what's going on at this point.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
What have you been up to this week? You finished out The Wolf Among Us.
I did, yeah. That's kind of been dominating what parts of my week are not dedicated to being in the studio this week. So yeah, I finished the final episode, and then after finishing the final episode, I played the final episode again, and then actually started to go back and play the earlier portions of earlier episodes in the season to kind of fit all the pieces together and try and keep track of everything that happened in the finale. I wrote my recap of the episode up on the site, so if you've already played it, you can get like my super spoilerly thoughts on the episode there. What I will say is that this season has pretty much been on a downward slope for me, all the way up through season 4. Episode 5 brought it back up some, not all the way, but it did some good things that I appreciated. It made some of the decisions that seemed super arbitrary earlier in the season actually have some relevance. I don't think the story completely works. Um, it's a series. I mean, there are two things.
Okay.
The Walking Dead, I've always said before, is a game that I thought did well by its episodic structure. It didn't force you to keep track of too many plot details. Sometimes the overwhelming sadness of it, having those breaks was a really beneficial thing. This series has not benefited from that at all. A lot of the stuff that happens in the finale, at least several things, I had to go back and play those episodes to realize or even hinting at with some of the reveal stuff that happens at the end. There's been so much time in between each episode that the mystery itself, like the details of it, started to just kind of disappear from my brain.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not a game that really does well being episodic. It's a game that I think that if you are going to play it, you should just get all the episodes and play them pretty much in a row, like minimal breaks in between, because otherwise it gets real hard to keep track of what's going on.
It seems like, having not played it through quite yet, but so I can't even spoil what's going on or accidentally spoil because I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah.
But that whereas The Walking Dead in incremental chunks, like they felt like chapters in a story that was being told, as opposed to The Wolf Among Us, that like very. It sounds like the way this wraps up, the way everyone talks about it is, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. I need to go back and see what I missed.
Yeah.
And the huge gaps in time in between these episodes the way they are structured, seems like that makes it very difficult for that sort of twist to land in the way they maybe want it to.
Yeah.
That would land better if you had, say, played these all in the course of a week. You know, if you played one episode a day, kind of like when you marathon a television show,
Yep.
you would, the way the dots connect, in whatever way they do, connect a lot smoother when you actually are looking at the dots every single day.
Yeah. It's definitely that, and it's also that some of the episodes just feel like they're stretching for time, especially the fourth episode, which is about an hour long and really needs to be about a half hour long. You can tell that like they needed to have a full episode in there, but because of the way the script was structured, they didn't have a lot of material to put into that fourth episode. So there's these conversations that just go on for far longer than they need to. And it just doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't completely it just doesn't feel like the material just doesn't feel as strong because of it. Like it's broken up in a way that just doesn't have the same oomph that a lot of the Walking Dead stuff does. And really, it's just the last piece of the ending. It's like the very last stinger of the finale that sort of caught me by surprise, and I was frankly totally confused by. The rest of what happens in the finale, like if you've been paying any attention at all, like it builds to something that is sort of predictable, but at the same time, like ties things up in a very nice way. But again, it's not perfect because some of the stuff you have to like, some of the stuff that it brings up, like all this stuff that your character, that Bigby does throughout the series, is sort of tallied up. Like the decisions you make, the way you treat people, the way you act, it's all sort of like brought together into one kind of larger, sort of defining moment of the series. And if you don't play it with enough of if you don't play it a certain way enough, the argument and the way it's presented to you in the episode is not as strong. Like the way the storytelling tries to kind of like make itself flexible, it requires you to actually play it a certain way more than another. And so if you play it the other way, it doesn't come off nearly as well. Does that make any sense? Did what I say make any damn sense?
Yeah. And I think there's actually a good point from Marino in the chat. I feel like people that marathon The Walking Dead Season 1 missed out on some of the emotional attachment to the characters, primarily Lee and Clem. I feel like I'd been taking care of her for 8 months or whatever. I think he's alluding to the fact that The Walking Dead, especially Season 1, was a journey. These characters were constantly moving from place to place. They were traveling long distances. They were, in trucks. They were in trains. So that in that way, even if it wasn't purposeful, maybe this wasn't, intended by Telltale, but the fact that those characters were on a journey sort of played into the idea that you were anxious to see where they were going to get the new episode. It just, again, accidental or on purpose, felt better structured in a way that The Walking Dead or the Wolf Among Us feels much more. The stingers, the cliffhangers, the way the storytelling was happening, I needed those episodes every Friday at 8 p.m. Like I'm watching the X-Files or something, and that's why you can build upon a very specific mythology and twist, because you've got all that stuff fresh in your head, which is not what The Walking Dead did. Like a lot of the beats were emotional, character-based, and not so much red herrings that you had to keep track of, which it seems like The Wolf Among Us plays much more into.
Well, and the difference also is that, especially in the first season, maybe not as much in the second season so far, but in the first season of The Walking Dead, each episode felt a little bit like its own standalone story, especially the one that takes place on the farm. Like that in and of itself is like practically its own little thing. But that's like I said, it's its own self-contained little thing, whereas this is like a singular sort of police procedural arc. And having a month in between episodes, or however long it was for some of them, really negates a lot of the impact. And it also it's a game that probably has too many characters, honestly, for what it can actually do with the amount of time it has. There are some characters that made a really great impression in like the first 2 episodes of The Wolf Among Us, and then they kind of, if they don't completely disappear, then they just sort of fall into the background and don't become very interesting for the remainder of the season, and that's a real bummer. It feels like there was a ton of material for them to work with, and they didn't necessarily find the exact right amount of it to put into a 5-season arc. Like they tried to stuff a little too much in there with too many breaks in between, and it just didn't land quite the way I was hoping it would. I will say that the very end twist, the thing that comes that did kind of throw me off, going back and looking at those details and realizing like where the hints were for that and where the pieces of the puzzle kind of were that I just didn't quite grasp. There was some genuinely clever storytelling in there, but again, I totally lost track of it because the first fucking episode of that came out in like what, November last year, December.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been months since that happened. I had almost completely forgotten half the details of that episode.
Yeah, and I wonder if something that Telltale will have to start considering going forward is reconsidering how many episodes are in a season or in a series, because
Yeah.
they seem to be sort of establishing that what they're doing is 5 episodes. Like that is the Telltale model. But just like different shows, different networks adopt different models in terms of what benefits their storytelling. They have mini-series events, and you have like regular network series that go 23 episodes, and then you have shows like V personally on HBO that only go for like 8, and then you have like Game of Thrones that goes for 12. But it seems like maybe there might have to be a point where Telltale says, look, like this really needs 8 episodes, or this only needs 3 episodes. But they start to probably run into problems with pricing at that point, because once people, and we've seen this happen before with video games, once people sort of become accustomed to what the value proposition is, they get very antsy when you start messing with that.
Yeah. And it would, I mean, they're probably never going to do this just because of the development cycle that they have built for themselves, and now that they have like, potentially 3 different series going at some point, maybe this just isn't feasible. But it would probably help them a lot if they would just finish developing all the episodes in the season before releasing any of them, because the amount of time that it takes, like I said, the amount of time between episodes is probably too damn long. And I think that it just seems like, especially in places like in sort of the middle episodes or like the second to last episode, there just isn't that flow to it. Like there's so much distance between them that like it never quite feels like it fits entirely together. And I think they would benefit from having like a 2-week site, like just getting it all, like getting them all done, having them all play tested and done in one shot, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and then releasing them like every 2 weeks or something. Maybe that just doesn't work with the way they have built their system, their studio. But I think that The Wolf Among Us suffers a lot from the way that they released it. And I know I'm like harping on this point, but it's like it bums me out because the atmosphere in that game is terrific. Like the music, the visuals, the basic like the world that game, and I know it's based on a comic series which I've never read, but that got me more interested potentially in the comic series because the world seems super fascinating. I just don't think the story that they chose to tell was like really that strong.
Yeah, the release schedule question is a really interesting one, and I'm curious to see how they address that going forward. Especially when they start ramping up on these series, I'm not quite sure what the resource strain is on Telltale writ large when they're adding in Borderlands and then Game of Thrones, and one assumes they'll do another season of Wolf Among Us, but I suppose they could kind of end it here, but I suspect they'll at least give it a second season. But yeah, you're right. I understand the pace at which they create and release these episodes, but there are certainly drawbacks to that, especially based on certain kinds of storytelling, because yeah, you're right. It seems like The Wolf Among Us was hurt by its sort of distribution and release model more so than the actual storytelling itself. But
Yeah.
those are intertwined when we're talking about an episodic structure that doesn't come out with any reliability.
Yeah. I've heard that Bill Willingham is actually wrapping up that comic series at some point. Like he is apparently going to bring it to an end very soon. So maybe there isn't necessarily. I mean, this is a prequel to the stuff that happens in the comics, so I imagine there's probably still some wiggle room if they wanted to do some more prequel stuff. But it sounds like that franchise might be coming to an end at some point.
So you'd still recommend people play it though? It seems like you enjoy it just with some reservations.
I started writing the full season review. My recommendation to everyone is going to be, if you do play it, try and play it all in one short succession. I don't know if I'm going to give it a particularly enthusiastic recommendation, but I think that there's something there that's worth recommending if you are into like The Walking Dead or just any of the Telltale style stuff. Like there's enough there that I think is cool. It's definitely uneven in a way that that first season of The Walking Dead was not. And you know, it has diminishing returns in a way that I think really it is not a game you should play in long chunks. So yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's good, but I don't think it's spectacular.
That first episode is fantastic.
It
I
is.
was
It's a
so
great pilot.
excited for this series based on that first episode, especially when we got our first peek at The Walking Dead season 2, which I'm enjoying The Walking Dead season 2, and it is getting stronger as it goes along. But
Yeah.
it is hard to imagine that it's going to end up in my top 10 at the end of the year. It's more just it's become kind of like a show that you keep watching because you enjoy it, but it doesn't. It's not getting me interested and as emotionally attached as I was the last time around. And I sort of felt like The Wolf Among Us was going to become that. And that first episode seemed like it had all the promise in the world, and it just clearly hasn't quite lived up to that.
Hey, lots of great pilots never turn into great TV series. So, in this case,
That's true.
they had a great pilot episode, and then it was just kind of downhill from there. And then, again, brought it back up a little bit at the end, but not everything I was hoping it would be. So that was kind of my week.
So that was basically you and then you left Vinny to rot with a robot in the studio by himself.
To be fair, yesterday I took some of the robot abuse as well. We recorded an actual unfinished video for that yesterday, and I got to try some Bot Colony myself. That thing seems like a complete piece of shit. I know it's not finished, it's early access or whatever, but everything about that game, just even on a conceptual level, seems horrible.
So the video that's up on the site, that if you're a premium member, I highly recommend. I don't necessarily tune into everything that we do, but I was having a hard time turning away from watching Vinny interact with this robot. But that's a premium video that's locked away for some people. So I want you sort of what is Bot Colony?
So Bot Colony is a game that uses the native Windows voice recognition software. And it's a sci-fi game where you're supposed to use that voice recognition software to command robots to do things for you in this future society. It's apparently an episodic game, which great.
Yeah, you're gonna play 5 episodes of that. I would pay to watch that. I would.
So,
I'll sign up for a premium membership.
Most of what Vinny was doing in that video was the opening level, which is sort of like a tutorial thing where you have to command this robot to go and do things around this house. Like you're supposed to be cleaning up after a break-in or something. And you can type in the commands too, which makes things a little bit easier. But there are 2 key things in all of this. One, the voice recognition stuff is fucking terrible. Just top to bottom. Doesn't matter how slow you speak. Doesn't matter how loud you are. Doesn't matter if you're using a headset microphone, which we tried during the unfinished stuff. It works better, but it still doesn't really work. Not just because it doesn't completely recognize the commands that you're saying vocally, but also because it is really bad about telling you what kinds of commands it actually understands. We spent 40 minutes of the video, maybe, just trying to get a robot arm to pick up a briefcase. The briefcase had a bomb in it, and we were on a timed mission, and we were trying to get it to pick it up and put it on this conveyor belt so it could be scanned, and 8 or 9 times out of 10, it would try to reach for something that was nowhere near what we had commanded and pointed it at to do. So I think it's just broken. I think the whole thing is just broken. The game is basically a hidden object game. Or at the very least, just a really shitty light adventure game where you just tell these robots to solve these super light puzzles for you, but they can't even do that because it doesn't work.
Yeah, looking at someone in the chat pointed us to so after that video, people started looking into Bot Colony, and someone looked at Bot Colony's Steam page, which, unsurprisingly has quotes from the media where there have been write-ups about Bot Colony. And there's a quote from Destructoid in which so the Steam page says, attributing Destructoid, Bot Colony might be the first game to really name the dream of full vocal interaction. Now, it is not uncommon for quotes taken from write-ups by the press to be sort of selectively quoted. Often they'll just kind of take a little chunk, or they'll take like a word like spectacular and do that. That's kind of par for the course, and oftentimes publishers will ask you, hey, is this okay? Not always. They don't have to do that, but it happens fairly often. But in this case, the selective quoting is pretty interesting because the full the full quote from Destructoid is, if it works, and that's a big if, then Bot Colony might be the first game to really nail the dream of full vocal interactions.
So yeah, that's taken slightly out of context.
I feel like that might summarize the entire Bot Colony existence.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell them right now, no, it might not. In fact, it very much does not. I don't know. It's an early access thing. Maybe they'll find a way to fix it and turn it into something, but I think even the underlying game beyond the technology seems really dumb and not well made. That is the fundamental issue here. Yes, the tech behind it also seems pretty broken, but they did not seem to make an interesting game around that tech either. So on all fronts, Bot Colony seems horrible. That is my impression of playing of Bot Colony after like spending an hour or so with it yesterday, of just like, I never want to touch this again. This is so terrible. So there you go.
Yeah, your mileage may vary. Not everyone is as funny as Vinny Caravella. My guess is the frustration that Vinny had would be mostly what everyone else experienced playing that game, not the fun of Vinny teaching that robot how to dance.
Yeah. There's no dancing in the unfinished video, I'm sorry to say, but there is plenty of botched bomb disposal and at least a few minutes of further living room adjustment. So look for that soon, I guess. I don't know.
That seems like that'd be some sort of real awful hell, just being caught in a room playing Bot Colony. You can't leave until you finish Bot Colony.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing, is I don't think you ever could leave, because I don't know that there is a way to actually finish Bot Colony. I don't know that you can successfully do all the things that you need to do in that game to progress. Like, at one point, we just gave up on the living room because, like, this is just taking forever, so fuck it, let's just skip to the other chapter. Went to the next chapter, and then everything just went to hell again. It's just, no, it's just not a good game. It's 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 not good.
The chat's now figuring out what quotes they could pull from the show that could end up on the Bot Colony Steam page. Bot Colony seems, Alex Navarro, Giant Bomb. That's good. I like that.
I like the idea of taking the audio from this and just turning it into like a Sneakers Warner Brandis thing of my voice is my passport, verify me. Like just making this into a quote that somehow benefits them. Hopefully I have used no words that will actually allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's a good one. Quote, you can't leave until you finish Bot Colony, Patrick Klepek. That's great. It's fantastic. I sign off on that. If the Bot Colony developers want to be completely disingenuous with my words, I'll sign off on that quote. That's fantastic. That's too funny.
Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. So yeah, we did that. We actually recorded a couple of other things. We're gonna record a couple more things today. I'm actually thinking about doing a Bombasket entry for Mega Man 2 because apparently this is the 25th anniversary of its U.S. release.
Oh, you mean the greatest game of all time?
It's up there. It's way up there. Yeah, and it's certainly the greatest Mega Man game of all time. So
I flip between Mega Man 2 and Deus Ex as my favorite games ever made. The reason I flip between them is because Deus Ex is much harder to go back to and appreciate. It was a game that has influenced so much of modern sort of systemic, not open world, but give player choice design. The idea that in Deus Ex that you could have 3 different paths to accomplish the same objective: one combat, one stealthy, one hacking, and go about a world in all sorts of different ways was amazing back then. That's just not as amazing now because other games have iterated on it, including a sequel to Deus Ex itself. Whereas Mega Man 2, I think, holds up much more these days, just because, A, it's so good, and B, that they just don't make games like that anymore.
Yeah, Mega Man 2 and 3 are 2 of the greatest action platformers of all time. I tend to lean to because that's the one I think I spent the most time with, though I think you can make a reasonable argument for 3.
I got. Don't make an argument for 4. Not that 4 is bad, but it's when the series begins, it's a slope into mediocrity.
That's when they
But
got to Pharaoh Man, and once you get to Pharaoh Man, that's when they just kind of stopped caring.
when was Garbage Man?
That might have been like 5. I don't. Yeah, that wasn't
Garbage
too far.
Man, Mega Man. The last time I played through all of them was when that collection came out on PS2, which
Yeah, I remember that.
I really enjoyed that collection because it allowed me to play a bunch of the Mega Man games that I guess Garbage Man was not in the games. It was Junk Man.
Junkman sounds reasonable. I think Garbage Man is maybe like too specific a name for one of those things.
That's Mega Man 7. Who am I thinking of? I don't know. I'm sure the chat will correct me. Either way, yeah, Mega Man 2. That's a really good fucking game. I haven't played it in years, but I should. Ooh, that might get me to play Mega Man 2 again. That Mega Man 2 is like one of those games that I feel like I should play once a year. Like I have friends that play Super Mario Brothers 1 once a year just to remind themselves how good it is. It's sort of like a religious thing they do annually. Mega Man 2 should be my religious experience every year.
Now, do you have an order? Do you have a specific boss order for that game?
I would if I was playing it every year, but I mean, hey, you play Airman first. That's just.
I agree.
I don't think that's a question.
Those people are nightmares.
Oh, Airman is, it's a tough first stage to actually go through because you have all the sort of like wind little enemies that you're having to navigate from platform to platform, but his pattern is super easy and you can take him out with the main buster like no problem.
Yeah, no, I go Airman, Crashman, Metal Man, and then I would have to look at the list of bosses to remember from there, but those are always my first 3, so.
Yeah, the fact that I can't tell you the order beyond Airman, that probably means that I need to play Mega Man 2 again. And you probably need to play Mega Man 2 for this audience.
Oh, I'm gonna do it. So we'll hopefully try and record that today and maybe put that up this weekend. Yeah, that's kind of been my week. What have you been up to?
Man, so I've got an article going up on Monday about been driven mad by this game Mountain. Are you aware of this game Mountain?
I'm well aware of this game. I have seen it played by some people. I have read some of the pieces on the internet about it.
So Mountain is if you've seen the movie Her, the Spike Jonze AI film from last year, the video game animated sequences were directed by this artist David O'Reilly, who is like crazy young. I think he's only 25, which is ridiculous. But he's an artist that does a lot of animation. He directed an episode of Adventure Time, and he also just released this game called Mountain, in which it's out for PC and Mac, probably Linux. I'm not sure though. You can buy it on the official website. It's coming to Steam, and it's on the App Store right now as well. But it's a mountain, and you can spin the mountain around. You can kind of zoom in on the mountain. You can zoom out from the mountain. And then every once in a while, random objects from the sky fall on it, like a banana or an egg. I have a light bulb on mine right now. There's a pickaxe. And it cycles through sort of like day and night, and then it also has various seasons that occur as well. And that's it. Like that's all. Oh, also at the bottom there's kind of a piano. You can sort of create little chimes, and occasionally these phrases will show up on the screen, and it just says, "I'm a total babe" was the last one. So it's not even that these are insightful, meaningful sort of expressions of nature and things like that. So that's all there really is to it. It's sort of like a kind of a digital chia pet that evolves without you being able to interact with it. And it's caused a lot of really interesting reactions because, and here's sort of the thrust of the piece that I'm putting together and that'll be up on Monday, is that we're so used to games, even artful ones, that have a purpose or intent that they communicate to us. Whether that's not even necessarily through game, a very specific sort of like platformy gameplay like Journey. You have things like, to also use that game company, Flow. Or Electroplankton, right? Where it's like, okay, you don't really have an objective necessarily, but and it's sort of artful in that capacity. But there's always sort of something to it. The game is communicating a thing for the player to do. And in
Yeah.
Mountain, nothing. It's
Right.
just fucking there.
It's an object.
It is. And you just stare at it, and it exists, and you exist, and you can interact with it. You can do stuff. So as long as you're not one of those people that thinks a video game's qualification is that it has like an end state, or that you can be killed, or there are specific goals necessarily if you want to get into the weeds on what defines a game. It hits the very basic qualifications of being interactive, but otherwise it just stares at you and it's just Mountain. And I think that's why it frustrates the hell out of people, because it seems like there should be more meaning than there is, and I don't think there is. So you start projecting your own meanings onto it, which I think is a kind of fascinating process.
Well, I mean, that's art, right? Like, that's the whole thing of art, is that, there is an intent perhaps behind it, but, inherently most people will just see what they want to see in it. This sounds like, an art project more than anything else, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I don't know. Like, I've read pieces that have commended it for being this sort of like really bizarre sort of out there experience that is sort of unlike a lot of other things that call themselves games, at least. And I've read pieces that said, I don't understand this. People seem to be finding a lot of meaning in this that I can't. I feel like this is making fun of me. I don't know that I think either is really a definitive response to something like that. Like, again, like you said, it's something that you find what you're going to find in it, and if you find nothing in it, well then, okay, that's it. There's nothing to it. But I think I would probably lean that way. Like, I feel like if I were to actually sit there and play it, like after 20 minutes, I'd be like, all right, I think I've had enough of this. I watched Vinny mess with it for a while, and by that point, I feel like I'd kind of maybe had enough of it. Did you actually enjoy like prodding at it or doing things or typing words in? Because I know at some point it asked you to type in a bunch of different stuff.
I enjoy thinking about it.
Okay.
I don't know if I enjoy it so much, and I guess that's the point of it, right? I think that's if you go to David O'Reilly's Twitter feed, if you see a little bit of what he's talked about in regards to the game, which he's very abstract and vague and doesn't want to be nailed down to specifics. I mean, I'm running an interview with him as a part of my piece on Monday, and I mean the guy here. I'll give you a little. I'll give you a taste of
okay.
kind of interview you get from him when you try and ask him about Mountain. Let's see. Okay. When you think of a mountain, what comes to mind? David O'Reilly, a mountain. If Activision came up to you and said, "Hey kid, explain Mountain to me," what would you say? David O'Reilly, go away. Me. So many video games ask the player what they want to do. Mountain just exists. Stuff happens. Do you consider Mountain to be commentary? O'Reilly. I don't say anything about what it is or isn't. Some people see it as commentary, others don't. So, he's being a little bit cheeky,
right.
But I think it's also a performative aspect of
Yeah.
wanting to sort of poke the hive, and also, look, if I ascribe any message to Mountain, and I think it's very easy to ascribe too much to it, which I think is also the point.
Mm-hmm.
It is that the idea of looking for meaning where there is no meaning, and then watching people squirm when they're uncomfortable with there being no explanation.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty fun.
I guess
that's art. It's like when you look at an abstract painting, right? Like, what do you think about? I don't know. Whatever happens to come to mind, or whatever you're feeling, right? Like, so I looked at Mountain and thought to myself, well, maybe this is a commentary on the hand-holding nature of video games, and the fact that this game doesn't ask you to do anything. That's the reason it's so frustrating. Is that just because that's what I'm thinking about right now, and that's how I feel about a lot of video games? Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe. And I don't know. If that's all it is to frustrate you and then you project on it, I don't know. That seems really fascinating, even if a lot of people don't find it interesting, which...
I'll give it this. I have enjoyed the way that it has enraged a certain subset of people who are just like, how dare you call this a game? How dare you, put this into, like, how dare anyone try and ascribe any sort of meaning to this, weird screensaver or whatever. Like, I'm always very happy when people are able to make things that enrage people to that kind of degree, because it just sort of lets me know, like, who are the people who are very easily aroused by anyone even remotely challenging, their dearly held beliefs about what something is or isn't. I don't think I'm ever going to download it or mess with it myself, but in a way, I think I'm just kind of glad that thing exists.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about it too. Like it has spurred a lot of interesting discussions, and in my piece, I'll link to some other some pieces that have been written. It's curious, and
It's some very interesting writing. Like, even though I think he maybe kind of lost the plot a little bit at some point, Cameron Kunzelman's review on Paste of that game is actually a really fascinating piece of writing, whether you agree with his assessments or not. I appreciate it in that respect, that it does seem like to be an interesting source of inspiration for some very good writers to explore some very interesting stuff.
Well, and also that often with video games or anything that is created with any piece of media or whatever, you have authors talking about it. The creator discusses authorial intent, and that's, I think, part of why I really enjoyed David O'Reilly's really glib answers to me, is that he refuses to engage with that, and that makes Mountain all the more infuriating or interesting depending on how you react to the conversation, what you think of the idea of stuff like this as art or games or whatever, and the fact that he refuses to budge on explaining here's what I meant to do, I think just enrages people even more, and then just makes the discussion all the more interesting. So
that's great. Good for him. I hope he never breaks on that. I hope he just continues to respond exactly the way he has been, and never ever indulges the people who are upset about this.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll have a piece up on Monday with an interview with David that just really made me. He even apologized in the email. It was like, I hope you understand that I just don't want to get into a lot of things, and then sent me the answers to my questions that add up to maybe a paragraph from eight questions. Which, so again, there's a little bit of a wink going on in a performative aspect, but on the other spectrum of that, I played through a good chunk of Valiant Hearts last night.
Yes.
Which I am enjoying tremendously.
Yeah, that's a good game. What point are you up to without giving away too much?
Let's see. I'm in the winter.
Okay.
So the trench warfare. The Valiant Hearts. Opens at the beginning of World War I in 1914, and then it carries through over. I don't know how deep it goes into the war because I haven't seen all the way to the end. They have some stories that are running parallel with multiple characters that kind of give you a flavor, a lot of what's happening in World War I. But yes, I'm up to probably what's considered one of the worst arcs of World War I, which was the many years in trench warfare, especially during the winters. And yeah, that game tonally swings all over the place in a way that could be so dangerous.
Yep.
And so bad. And it could miss the mark so much.
Wildly, yeah.
And I think sometimes it does, but it really holds on tight. And somehow, despite its cartoony nature, there's some, maybe, I don't know how much of this is because, all sorts of war games tend to go for hyperrealism, but the sort of abstract, animated look to Valiant Hearts actually makes it more emotionally engaging.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for taking a format, which is in the case is, frankly, fairly cute animation, because most of the characters, they're, I mean, I'm not going to say adorable, but they're definitely kind of cutely drawn, especially the damn dog. And they're portraying these really horrific circumstances using this art style. Like, you have this really jaunty kind of, joggy little character who's climbing up a mountain of dead bodies. That's fucked up, and that juxtaposition works surprisingly well. Like you said, the tone of that game is kind of all over the place, but it has these very specific limits that it works within, and somehow it manages to pretty much avoid ever feeling like it is completely flying off the reservation as far as whether it's getting too serious about what it's doing or it's being too, kind of jaunty and happy about its circumstances.
Yeah, and I guess there really is something about having played so many games in which violence is depicted in a not hyper realistic, but hyper also exaggerated manner
Right.
that you just become numb to. When you see stuff like Sniper Elite, which seems like a game that people enjoy, and it's probably all right in that respect. But just the way that game depicts shooting another human being is it's just ridiculous, and
Yeah.
we see that all the time in video games. And so when Valiant Hearts goes in the other direction to sort of I think cartoon is too glib of a term to describe exactly what it is, but the animated nature of it when it is depicting really really horrific events, piles of bodies, gas being released upon adults and children. It hits you in the gut in a way that I don't think would be nearly as effective if those were like hyper detailed polygons.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it's what we're used to. We're used to watching war play out in a very specific way, which is to say, usually in shooters that have a certain amount of realism to them. Or even, in the case of something like Wolfenstein, not really a particularly realistic game in a lot of ways, but it has a very hyper-realistic look to it. Yeah, the art and just the music and just the overall tone of the storytelling in Valiant Hearts, it really impressed me a lot. How have you found the gameplay? Because that was like the one part that didn't completely work for me all the time. Like there were definitely puzzles that I enjoyed more than others. There were other parts that felt like they just kind of dragged a little bit. Like, has that bothered you much at all, or has it really not been a factor?
It seems like the developers really struggled to figure out what the gameplay of this game should be beyond just running around, talking to people, and experiencing events that occurred in World War I from the perspective of these couple of characters that you're following around and playing as. And not that some of the puzzles. So I'll say, without getting too, and I'm not going to talk about the story of the game, but one of the characters you play is a medic, and I thought that was the strongest arc so far because it was one of the best meldings of what you can imagine sort of a gameplay mechanic for this character that also doesn't get into sort of like borderline ridiculous, like why are you twisting all these pipes and throwing these rocks to knock down ladders, like things that you just wouldn't be doing. And I'm not saying Valiant Hearts needs to be a realistic portrayal of what all these characters would be doing on a beat-to-beat moment in World War I, but there are times when it goes to such lengths to devise a puzzle for you that it's sort of like, okay, you're kind of taking me out of this at this point. Whereas this character that's a medic and you're going and healing people, and then they also have sort of a rhythm game that occurs when you're sort of patching them up. I don't know. I thought that was a pretty brilliant way to represent a way for the character to do something when you're sort of applying these these needles and these bandages that felt meaningful to the character and for the player as they were interacting.
I liked pieces of the medic story. I don't think she's as fleshed out as she could have been, and I did not really like the rhythm in the game at all. I found it just kind of distracting, and it's so easy, like it's so absurdly easy that it just doesn't feel like you're really even doing anything.
Sure.
So I mean, that was just kind of my take on it. I mean, for me, the interesting stuff to me was the main character has like the shovel where you're like you're kind of digging through the dirt and like trying to avoid like shells and trying to kind of dig through the environment, but also like the total lack of combat for the most part was interesting to me too. I like the idea that like in the rare instance I did have to fight someone, I'd have to get up close and personal because you don't really ever play anyone with a gun in that game. Like there's a part where you're driving a tank and you're shooting down planes and like artillery, but there's never really a point where you just have a gun in your hand and you're just running around shooting people. Like that just does not happen in that game. And I think that's an interesting twist considering I can't actually think of the last like definitive war game that took place during like an actual theater of war that didn't just throw a rifle in your hand and say go, unless it was like a strategy game or something.
Yeah, it is interesting that, and maybe this makes the violence that occurs around these characters much more powerful and evocative is the fact that you as the player don't really participate in the violence. So
Right.
there are occasions where you'll knock out a soldier with a shovel or something along those lines, but you're not sneaking up on people and stabbing them in the back, and I wonder if that's what makes part of the game so refreshing is that because you aren't participatory in this violence, and often, like a lot of wars, that things are just kind of happening around you out of your control. That's what only highlights how crazy what's occurring is because you're just one person trying to make your way through. And each of these characters has a different reason to either be together or to be moving forward on their own. And all of this madness is happening around them. The bits that I sort of had trouble sort of reconciling were sort of the kind of hokey reasons they come up with for the characters to kind of all be together.
Right.
Even some of what the characters are setting out to do, I just can't really buy in any even pseudo-realistic manner. But you kind of get over it, and one thing I pointed out on Twitter last night after playing it for a couple of hours was I really enjoy, for the most part, how this game handles collectibles. Because when the game starts up, the first flavor text at the top is there are over 100 collectibles in this game, and I was like, I thought I was going to get into this sort of like semi-serious sort of take on a war that is often not portrayed in video games that often, and the first thing the game is telling me is like, have fun grabbing these collectibles.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they hide these collectibles in spaces that take away from the drama and tension of what's occurring on the screen when you should not be spending your time looking for them. And that there are other times where they're in very convenient places, like in a locker, that you're sort of calmly looking around a space. But taking away from that, these collectibles aren't just collectibles. They have real, concrete information about World War I that is absolutely fascinating and is relevant to the section of the game you're in, and also helps paint a much larger picture of what was happening at that point in time in the conflict, even if that's not where your characters are situated at the time.
Yeah, the history stuff is really well done. As someone who knew a little bit about World War I, but not a ton, I found that stuff actually really informative and kind of lovingly done in a way that a lot of historical games don't necessarily do it. It's presented in a way that's palatable, I think, to someone who's not like a giant history nerd necessarily, but still has like a little bit of interest in that stuff.
But I think the Assassin's Creed games do it terribly.
Yeah.
I used to think that the Assassin's Creed games are going to be this interesting vehicle for, obviously, it's a sci-fi setup, so it's not the game itself, the story it's telling is not historically accurate, even if there are historical figures and locations. But you'll come across buildings in Assassin's Creed, and then you can look them up in sort of this big encyclopedia that can explain their actual historical relevance. But it does it so inelegantly that you end up looking at 3 or 4 and then never going back. At least that's what I did. And I think what's brilliant about Valiant Hearts is the way it contextualizes it in the situation you're in, the way it slowly doles them out. I don't know, and it's got pictures, and it's just great. It's just a lot of games get this part wrong, and Valiant Hearts gets it so right.
Yeah, it really does. We should probably touch on some news now that we're kind of getting toward the.
We are. Wow. Yeah.
Here. But Valiant Hearts, 2 thumbs up, I think, from Patrick and Alex is what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking out the rest of it and playing through Wolf Among Us this weekend. But yeah, Valiant Hearts, really
good stuff. Good stuff.
Is there a piece of news you wanted to get to first?
Nothing in particular. I just figured if we were going to cover it, now would be the time to do it. I would like to talk a little bit about this Aliens DLC stuff that's come out this week, mostly because digital Harry Dean Stanton motherfuckers. That's really all I got.
Sega announced that for Alien Isolation, they are doing what once sort of the kerfuffle was it was pre-order DLC that you get one pack for free if you pre-order. The other pack for free if you pre-order at GameStop, and then you get both. Now they've since said those DLC packs will come out separately, although I suspect they'll charge $5 for each of them, as opposed to making them free. Right. But the DLC reunites the cast, or a large parts of the cast from Alien, and recreates 2 different scenarios from Alien, and one where you can pick as several different characters when they're trying to get the xenomorph into the airlock, and then one where you play as Ripley when you're just purely trying to escape.
Right.
And they've recreated the visual likeness too. In terms of separating my feelings about pre-order DLC and pre-orders and stuff like that. That's, I'd rather see them put in the effort and stuff like this than just another goddamn weapon.
Yes, absolutely. And I understand why people were upset at the pre-order notion at the beginning because, I think the issue here is that if they're going to make it available later on, that needs to be as clear as humanly possible. The reason I feel like a lot of publishers don't do that is because they want to trick as many people as they possibly fucking can into pre-ordering, thinking they have to in order to get that stuff. Because pre-orders, man, publishers still super duper care about pre-orders, and that is a distressing thing all kind of by itself. The content itself seems fine, or sounds like a good idea at least. And I'm certainly looking forward to playing because I actually just rewatched the original Alien like a couple of weeks ago, and that's pretty exciting to me. But yeah, I completely understand why people's reaction was what it was. Because man, yeah, if you're gonna start locking stuff like that behind pre-order, that's kind of not very cool.
Yeah, and actually, like, completely separate from the DLC stuff and the pre-order stuff, it makes me happy that they're doing this DLC and playing out these scenarios separate from an actual Alien Isolation. One of the things I was worried about was that they would just end up treating Alien Isolation as a complete retread of Alien, and you just be doing a lot of the fun scenarios that showed up in Alien, such as trying to shove a xenomorph out of an airlock. And not to say there maybe won't be a sequence like that, but it gives me confidence that they didn't rely on the favorite bits from Alien as direct inspiration for what you'll actually be doing in Isolation. So they get to have those bits, and they put them in DLC, but then hopefully they won't be a part of Isolation, and they'll be like sort of wholly unique scenarios in which you're dealing with the creature.
Right, you won't have to relive your favorite scenes from the Alien movies in this game that does not actually take place during any of the Alien movies. That was kind of one of the things that sort of drove me crazy about Colonial Marines. So there were actually a lot of things that drove me crazy about that game, but one of them was that it kept trying to kept trying to force ways to get the player into scenes and locations that you would, hey, remember Aliens? Remember when you were at Hadley's Hope and you were all barricaded in and the aliens were kind of coming from everywhere? Now you get to do that. Remember in Alien when you went to the crazy ship with the space jockey? Now you get to do that. Look at him. There he is. Isn't that great? All right, now walk around here for 20 minutes and then, I don't know, go shoot some stuff. It's just, I hate it when games do that. And yes, keeping that separate, thank you, is all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And it was interesting. I asked people on Twitter yesterday because I had sort of offhandedly mentioned after putting up that story that who pre-orders in 2014 anyway? And it turns out a lot of people do, and there's a whole varied amount of reasons that I think a lot of them were completely justifiable that people do that. I might pluck some of those and write a story about it. Maybe not today because I have a lot to do already today, but maybe on Monday. But one of the really compelling ones that I just hadn't really thought about because I don't have to worry that often about paying for games myself, and it's part of what you kind of forget about in this job is that especially in September, October, November, just so many games come out, and if you are someone that owns every console, that's a lot of money to justify every week or every 2 weeks if you want to pay for these games, you want to play these games. And so what a lot of people do is games they know they're going to buy, say Arkham Knight. That's a game you can probably safely pre-order. Maybe it's not going to be as good as Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, but it's probably going to be pretty good, right? And so if you know you're going to buy that game, the reviews don't matter to you. You trust the developer, but you know that money might be tight in October. Well, it's you pay $10 off now because you got $10 now, and then next month you've got an extra $15. You put that away, or you get a gift card and you apply it so that you don't accidentally spend it on something else. And those all seemed like completely legitimate reasons to pre-order a game months and months in advance, ahead of reviews. Yes, it does qualify as sort of a down payment for a publisher, and it helps them out in that regard. But in terms of how that helps that specific consumer, that's a totally understandable reason that they would want to do that stuff way in advance.
Yeah, for sure.
So, also, Cliff Bleszinski, we mentioned that he had a new company last week, but Boss Key Productions announced their first game, which is called, well, he's codenamed Blue Streak. It's a free-to-play shooter. That's all we sort of know about it right now. But I think it's interesting that Cliff Bleszinski is making a free-to-play shooter while Epic Games is rebooting Unreal Tournament as, they don't call it free-to-play, but they call it, it's going to be free shooter. And
Yes.
both of them are doing it at the same time. I don't know. What do you? I'll be honest. I didn't expect him to not make a shooter, but nothing about this really gets me psyched quite yet.
Yeah, there's. I mean, it's not enough information yet to really care one way or the other. Like, am I excited at the prospect of another free-to-play shooter coming from a developer that has traditionally made, good shooters, but traditionally just made shooters? Not necessarily, not on its own, not purely on its own merits. Like, I need to see what that game actually is before I really care. As we say, as I said before, like, I am looking forward to seeing what that game actually is and what it is that he is putting together. But the information that's there right now, the fact that it's free to play, like, that doesn't really factor too much into anything for me.
Yeah, I wonder what, Gears of War, was a great game, in many respects, but it had some very specific, unique hooks that made it different than anything else. It popularized the cover system, even if obviously, I'm well aware that it wasn't the game that invented stuff like that. That was it not Killzone, Killstreak?
We'll say yes. Why not?
I think that might have been the game. Anyway, people will correct me in the chat, but that and these sort of time reloading, and there were things that made that game really unique and different from anything else at the time, and I'm curious to see why he wants to return to shooters and what he has in mind. Just because another Unreal Tournament-esque, fast arena-based shooter that plays real well, maybe that's okay for a lot of people. That's probably not enough for me.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm especially curious to see how he approaches the free-to-play stuff.
For sure.
The game has to make money, so how does he choose to make that? Does it go beyond just customization? I'm curious. It's interesting to see a AAA developer.
Everyone is saying Kill Switch. That's the game. Kill Switch.
There you go. I knew it was Kill something.
Yeah.
Curious to see what he brings to the table in that regard. So, interested, but, what can you really say beyond, of course, you would be cautiously interested in what Cliff Bleszinski has to say next in shooters.
Sure. Last Gunslinger, via @replies here, just says, Mark Cerny told IGN, I would love to keep working on the Knack brand, definitely, he said. There is a lot of unexplored there. I think anybody who played the game would tell you that. Hi, Mark.
Okay, I think he might, he might be right that there's a lot unexplored, such as a quality video game.
Hey, Mark. I got a message for you as someone who played Knack from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. There is quite a lot that was unexplored in that game. None of it needs to be. There's nothing in that game that you need to explore ever again. So maybe focus on something else. I don't know. I like you, Mark. You're good. You're good with the Sony stuff. I'm very pleased with a lot of the work you have done on the PlayStation brand. Let's just let Knack die the death it deserves to die. It should just go where Blinks and all those other bullshit mascot platformers that never were, the nether realm where they have been banished to. That is where it belongs. Go hang out with Malice.
Malice?
Oh, come on. You remember Malice, don't you?
Ah! Oh, wow. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Wow. Malice. Argonaut made that, huh? Weird. Published by Mad Duck Productions. Who the hell is Mad Duck Productions? They published AMF Extreme Bowling 2006, High Rollers Casino, Malice, and Powerdrome.
There you go.
A bunch of other games that I'm not.
Malice was originally supposed to be an original Xbox exclusive, and then they dropped it.
That's why I remember it. I love the Wikipedia page for Malice. Reception. Malice was met with mediocre critical reception. Citation needed.
Well, I think the review I gave for that game was, in fact, had the word mediocre under it. So there you go. There's your citation right there.
Oh. So
Uh,
wait, so Argonaut canceled Malice and then someone else just picked it up and finished it?
I think
Oh,
so.
wow, weird.
Yeah, it became so it eventually came out on Xbox and PlayStation 2, uh, and it was a pretty shitty game. It was not, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good. I can see why they dropped it.
Interesting.
Also, I a tea tree says, oh wait, no, that's not the right person I'm looking at. Sorry. Sub O says Neversoft is no more as of today. That merge
Right.
has finally taken place.
Yeah, so okay, yeah, so the context there is that they're not shutting down and laying off all of Neversoft, but Neversoft is merging
Merging.
with Infinity Ward, and so it doesn't make sense for them to have two offices. They're becoming a singular studio as opposed to Neversoft working on map packs separately. I believe someone back when I had originally reported on this merger that they literally live down the street from one another in Santa
Right.
Monica. So this isn't like they're being dragged. Like if Raven Software was being folded in, that would be crazy because they're based in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But yeah, end of an era for sure. Neversoft made a lot of really terrific video games that they're never going to make anything like that again. They're going to work on Call of Duty games
They made at
forever.
least 5 or 6 really good to great Tony Hawk games, and I'm going to say 2 Guitar Hero games that were pretty great. Not spectacular, but pretty great.
I liked 3.
Yeah, 3. 3 is a good one. It's extremely hard, but it's a good game. And I thought, I thought World Tour, like the first one they did with drums and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, like I thought that game actually had some good stuff in it. But kind of fell off around the time they were kind of being forced to make one every year.
Gosh, they made a Skeleton Warriors video game, didn't they?
Oh, did they? Wow.
Yeah. And right, they did Apocalypse, that game with Bruce Willis. Oh, I remember. I remember renting that game from Blockbuster.
Oh man, I do. I don't remember anything about the game, but I do remember renting it, playing it for a couple of hours, and going, "Nope, I'm good."
It was a bad game.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
it was. Bruce Willis did not care about the fact that he was in that game.
no, I did not. But yeah, that's Jeff Gerstmann reviewed Apocalypse. Let's see what he has to think. Overall, Apocalypse is a really fun shooter with a great concept, but portions of it are poorly executed. All in all, the developers really wasted Bruce Willis's talents.
Hell yeah!
They missed an opportunity to do something extremely cool. They had set out from the beginning to make Apocalypse a one-man game. None of the major problems with the fragmented storyline and poor speech would even exist. I love that one of Jeff's major complaints is the lack of quality execution of the inclusion of Bruce Willis. That's such. I don't know if you could have a more Jeff Gerstmann line in a review than that. And that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's up there.
Although to be fair, that was early days of actors really collaborating on a video game. So even besides the fact that I think Jeff would still call that out in 2014, that was part of what got Apocalypse buzz, was the fact that Bruce Willis was coming down from Hollywood to interact with a video game, and clearly they didn't do a whole lot with it.
No, that's definitely disappointing. That's kind of all I got today. I don't know about you.
No, I was gonna laugh at the quote from Frank Gibeau from EA saying that the reason people reacted so poorly to Dungeon Keeper on mobile was because they innovated too much, which just reeks of speaking before you actually thought about what you were going to say.
I would think so. Yeah.
That's a
Too
poor
much
quote.
innovation. That's what's wrong with this world today.
I don't know if you could have said something worse. Especially because Andrew Wilson, the new CEO of EA, was just out. I think he gave an interview with Eurogamer in which they talked about Dungeon Keeper specifically, and he sort of apologized and said maybe they went too heavy on the monetization. And then you have Frank Gibeau, who's the head of EA Mobile, saying, maybe we just innovated too much.
It's almost like there's maybe a disconnect between some of the people who run those departments and the people who actually have to make those
Even
games.
if you
Just
think
a thought!
that, even
Just
if you
a thought!
think that, don't say it. That's the worst thing you could say to the enthusiast press. Just say that in your internal meetings, but don't.
Yeah.
Come on. So that's gonna do it for Bomb the Am with Scoops and the Wolf on Friday.
Yeah.
We are going to have a guest
Oh, are
on
we?
Monday. Yeah, that's right. I didn't tell you yet. Danielle Renault from Polygon,
Oh,
who, if you
cool.
listen to the Idle Thumbs podcast, she is now a regular on there as well. She's fantastic, and she's going to join us on Monday morning, despite living on the West Coast. She is
Damn.
going to get up. She's one of those people that works out on a regular
Like a lot.
basis.
Yeah.
So she's going to join us on a Monday morning. So look forward to that because I am. And what are you gonna? Are you playing anything this weekend? You got. I guess you're working on the Wolf Among Us review, but what are you getting into?
Well, I'm hoping I'll have that review done today. At the very latest, I should have it done by Monday. Other than that, no. I'm gonna fuck around with the Retrons more this weekend. I'm just gonna dig in. I've had Divinity Original Sin installed for a week and I haven't touched it yet. I'm actually watching some of Brett.
Brad was making an argument for me to play that. I didn't.
Yeah, I watched some of the quick look yesterday, and I think that game actually seems really cool. So I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, Let me see if I can pull up. He sold me on it with a very specific. It's gonna be hard to pull up the log, but he essentially described it as like hardcore overhead Skyrim. That's a simplified. It's hardcore D&D. Like I don't mean to get too reductive with it, but he was like if you liked that kind of game, if you liked that game with overhead tactics, you can probably get into Divinity Original Sin. It will just be prepared for a tough early going.
Yeah.
I never played Baldur's Gate. I didn't play Planescape Torment. I've never played any of those games. I tried to play Baldur's Gate when it came out on iPad, and just my eyes glazed over. Apologies to Baldur's Gate fans, but this one I feel like I might want to try and give this a shot. It gives me a sort of Patrick, if you just gave it a legitimate attempt, a real opportunity, maybe it could get its hooks in you in the same way a Dark Souls or something does, where it's just you got to get over that hump because you've just never played a game like it before.
Totally. Also, this week there are a lot of esports happening, so I might watch some of those esports at various points. I don't know which, but I'll probably watch something. Maybe
I'll probably put
Evo
on my iPad or something like that, and then I've been checking in every once in a while on. I linked to it in a story earlier this week about a noob-friendly Dota 2 stream that's commenting over the international 4 playoffs right now, and when you jump right into it, it's not. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more of this on Monday because we're trying to wrap up, but they'll obviously they're term heavy. There's a lot of Dota terms they're using at all times because they do still have to kind of talk about the game as it is. But if you listen to it for an extended period of time, they do a really good job of explaining, oh, here's this new hero we haven't seen. Here's what it does. It doesn't make me want to play the game, but it does allow me to have a better understanding of what's occurring on screen. So I definitely would recommend that to people if you are at least casually interested in seeing what's going on in the international. But for myself, I'm going to maybe load up Divinity. I'm going to try and finish Valiant Hearts and also The Wolf Among Us, and that'll bring us to Monday, which, Alex, I will see you then.
Oh.